Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided under Section 63(1) of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 1501, the Act, that the Minister of Finance may, by affirmative resolution of Parliament, borrow from a bank or other financial institution for the capital or current expenditure of government. And whereas it is further provided under Section 64 of the Act that money borrowed from the government must be paid into and form part of the consolidated fund. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to borrow an amount of $6 million, the loan, from the African Export-Import Bank to finance the construction of social infrastructure and other facilities damaged or destroyed by Tropical Storm Brett under the Educational Rehabilitation Climate-Linked Facility. And whereas the loan is repayable for 7 years, commencing from the date of disbursement of the loan, inclusive of a grace period of 2 years. And whereas the loan is repayable in equal semi-annual installments of a 30th day of June and the 31st day of December of each year, after the grace period. And whereas interest is payable at a rate of 6% per annum, be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to borrow an amount of $6 million, the loan, from the African Export-Import Bank to finance the construction of social infrastructure and other facilities damaged or destroyed by Tropical Storm Brett under the Education Rehabilitation Climate-Linked Facility. Be it further resolved that A, the loan is repayable in 7 years, commencing from the date of disbursement of the loan, inclusive of a grace period of 2 years. B, the loan is repayable in equal semi-annual installments on the 30th day of June and the 30th day of December of each year, after the grace period. C, interest is payable at a rate of 6% per annum. Madam President, by way of further elaboration or explanation of this bill, this motion, Madam President, seeks to secure about $6 million US, about exactly $6 million US, about 16.2 million EC dollars, from the Import-Export Bank of the African Import-Export Bank. And you would note, Madam President, that it's a non-traditional source of revenue or income that the government is working with. That symbolizes our willingness to engage in more South-South cooperation and looking towards the alternative. We know of the World Bank and the IMF and the traditional ones, and we know the fiscal situation and what all of these terms and conditions are. So that is one point of note. Madam President, the purpose of this loan is to really address an issue that, for me, I can relate to because of my background. Having been a manager of a school plant where the son of one of our senators spent 5 years with me, Senator Charles, and Senator Charles, for having been part of my parent-teacher association and giving support to the school, would have known and experienced firsthand what it was like to be able to make it comfortable for students, teachers, and other persons at the school to be able to operate and offer our children quality education. Year after year, we have had different ministers for education, different governments, and school plant management, both in terms of construction and in terms of maintenance, has been a real challenge. Different governments have taken different approaches. There was one time it was under the Ministry of Education through a particular unit, I think it was plant and equipment, and then there was a change to infrastructure where it was felt that infrastructure was better placed to manage the technical aspect of it. Then it was brought back to education. But as a result, despite all of those moves, Madam President, the school plants in this country have always had serious challenges in terms of their maintenance. We still have issues with making them compliant with expectations that include the students with disabilities, for example, where there are certain schools where on certain floors you can't even access because there's no ramp. We have certain basic amenities that are not available in many of our schools. The issue of smart classrooms is one of them that has emerged. So this loan, Madam President, really is geared towards giving serious attention to our school plant and to try to make the school environment safer and more comfortable for students to learn. And as an education practitioner, I can tell you, the theory or the research has definitely suggested that if children are comfortable and they are safe, they are more likely to do well, to do better. If they are uncomfortable, if they are hot, if they are distracted by the various issues, the elements, then it is less likely that they will be able to concentrate. So I think that this is a move that is necessary. Now, we wish we could have had more, because I think, if you ask me, sometimes I wonder if the minister wants the entire cut budget for education. And I can understand why, because there's so much that we can do. I remember the former Minister for Education, my good friend, Dr. Rigobert, had, in a conversation both here and outside, had indicated that $10 million was allocated for her schools. And she was very excited to mention it. But it didn't take very long for her to realize that even that was not sufficient. So it is very important for us to make sure that when we secure funding to repair and maintain our schools, that it is done and used in a way that can be very impactful. And so, Madam President, what was done? How did we arrive at what we need to do and which schools should be engaged first? There was a proper, thorough assessment done, and that is why it took us a little time, because you cannot just decide you're going to do school X, Y, and Z at random. There was a proper assessment that was done on the entire physical school plant in the country by the technical persons, both from planning and education. And it was found that about 16 schools needed immediate attention, out of many, many more. And some of those schools, it was bordering on the student safety and the staff. And these schools were selected based on that assessment. I just want to give you a little background on some of the schools and why. Madam President, one of the schools was the Entry Post-Secondary School, which started as a junior secondary school from 1972. Some of us here were not born yet. And I know the principal and I had a good relationship. I've been to that school, and I know the issues that he has had. Even at National Principals Association meetings, I recall some of the issues that he has raised. And they were never attended to. I'm not going to blame anyone and say that it was any doctrine that caused it not to be done, but I think it is about time that be addressed. Madam President, the Grand Riviere Secondary School in the Mabuya Valley is another one. Remember, this school used to be a senior primary school, and they have done some change in terms of the offerings. And these schools, and that particular school, has quite a lot of timber structures, especially the admin block, that I am again familiar with, that has become termite infested. And as we know in this country, everywhere you have wooden structures, you always have to deal with termites. And in some cases, it is not financially viable and wise to keep repairing termite-infested structures, because it just keeps coming back. So it may require demolishing the entire structure, treating the soil, and then erecting concrete structures so that you don't have to be spending much more money on maintenance. Another school, Madam President, that was mentioned, and I want you to note the constituencies. When the opposition comes to talk about, we're doing things in... Note the constituencies the schools are coming from. Another one is the OJ Combined School. And I think the MP has mentioned that he has had to intervene on his own to assist. The PRO Combined School, that is one of the schools in the South that has a very good reputation in terms of their performance. And it's a very large school, but predominantly wooden structures again. Same problem. The Reunion Primary School, there were some issues with electricals. That's in Choiseul. Note on opposition constituency. And I remember the MP being very pleased that that school was being attended to, because he has raised these issues. The Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School, that we know is one of our top schools on the island in the South, having an A-level department, over 1,000 students, and I see my colleague there smiling. I suspect she went to Beaufort Compre. So it has expanded and now requires attention. We also have to now include an additional vice principal, telling you that the challenges continue with administration and the structure. Madam President, these are some of the schools that I just mentioned that will be getting attention, and there are others. I also want to raise the issue that in addition to the physical structure being attended to, there are other programs and other initiatives that this intervention will complement. Madam President, I also have to mention Soufriere Comprehensive. That one is another one that has had some serious issues. In addition to paying attention to the school plans, it is always important to pay attention to what is going on within the school. And that is why there's also expenditure that has to come from to focus on the climate resilience of these schools. And in terms of the designs and what will be done, these schools will be, these repairs and these construction projects will be taken into consideration climate resilience. In fact, these tend to be one of the conditions to secure loans these days anyway. Everything you want, they will ask you, what is your plan for climate resistance? If you can't show it, you get no money. Pardon the slang, Madam President. So it also complements, as I said, what is going on within the school structure, and that is the instructional component. The instructional component including technology in the classroom, and that is why the laptop program is so important, because it complements. It's no point building a nice classroom, putting everything nice in it, and when you want to do the actual instruction, the students will have the tools to learn. It doesn't make sense. So it has to be complemented with proper smart classrooms. There will be 6 pre-kindergarten programs using the excess classroom spaces that exist in our schools to complement that. To complement that also, the government is also embarking on the first generation scholarships, and that is at the higher level, where students who come from families where nobody has been able to access tertiary education can have an opportunity to at least be one of the first persons in that family generation to have access to tertiary education. Madam President, again, complementing these infrastructure programs are the instructional programs that the government is investing in at our schools. Fencing is one of them. Security. School security has become an issue. We have heard of incidents where people from the outside have trespassed and have found themselves on school compounds. I can relate to that. It has happened at my school. And you have to be careful with safety of students. And so some of the schools have had issues with being properly fenced, and that is one of the initiatives that will be taken up with that borrowing. So, Madam President, I want to just wrap up here by saying that an investment in our children and in our schools is an investment in our next generation. When those of us here who are busy going back and forth about what should be done and how, when we have retired into our chairs, it is this generation that is going to take charge of this country and pay our pension. So I hope they'll be able to give us more than 600 and do more than what we are proposing to do. Because if we do not take care of them, if we do not invest in their education, if we do not invest in their development, then I don't have to tell you what will happen. And so it is vital that we emphasize that this particular motion seeks to put our students in our schools, our teachers, our principals, our ancillary staff, and parents who invest in these students. It seeks to put them first. It seeks to suggest that they are vital resources, our human resources that we need to invest in. And I look forward to the support for this motion, and ask that the House gives its support so that we can move on and secure those funds on behalf of the people, the children of our country. I thank you, Madam President.